של ניגון ושירי תפילה של חסידי הנשמה. בסוף כל קושי בא טוב, הייאוש עכשיו נסוג ולא קרוב, מקרבים עוד נשמה ונותנים לה קצת שמחה.
Rabotai, welcome back to Dalet Amot shel Halacha. Eno lakash baruch be'olam ela arba Amot shel Halacha bilvad. We are continuing Siman Sadik in Halacha Gimel. This will be part 3 of the Shi'ur. Let's do a small review and then we're going to jump in straight into the Mishnah Berurah Sivkat and Tet. And you will appreciate the Mishnah Berurah if you did do part 2 of the in the previous class with the Biur Halacha. You'll appreciate the Mishnah Berurah very much to see how much the Mishnah Berurah went out of its way to make Torah learning for us very feasible. We said in Siman Sadik Tet in Halacha Gimel, we spoke about when a person interrupts to do Havdala, that when he's going to come to do Havdala, he doesn't have to say the bracha of Borei Peragevan and the Koshel bracha. We saw immediately in the Biur Halacha, we're speaking about a situation where the people that were doing the Havdala never said the words Ba'uvin Avdil. Because if we're dealing with a case where they did use that phrase of Ba'uvin Avdil, it's a machloket between the Magen Avraham and the Taz. The Biur Halacha said, look into Siman Reish Ayin Aleph in Halacha Hey, which we do that. And over there we saw that the machloket between the Magen Avraham and the Taz was the same machloket when a person says Ba'uvin Nikadesh Kiddush Hayom. According to the Magen Avraham, he says when a person says those words Ba'uvin Nikadesh Kiddush Hayom and now he wants to go ahead and do Kiddush, the Magen Avraham says you don't have to say another bracha on the Koshel Kiddush. The Taz says you're going to say another bracha on the Koshel Kiddush. Brings that argument over here, comes out over here that according to the Magen Avraham, when a person says Ba'uvin Avdil, according to him, you're not going to say the bracha of Borei Peragefen and the Koshel Havdala. However, according to the Taz, you're going to need to say the bracha of Borei Peragefen and the Koshel Havdala. We did see in the Biur Halacha something very important. How did the Tosefet Shabbat learn out Havdala halachot from Kiddush halachot? Because we know Kiddush has stringencies that Havdala doesn't have. So maybe by Havdala, we would tell you maybe not to bless. So the Biur Halacha said no, because halachically speaking, they're identical. Meaning, just like by Kiddush in Siman Reish Ayin Aleph, just by the Kiddush over there, since once Kiddush or once Shabbat sets in, once sun sets in, you're no longer allowed to drink, you have to stop. And over there the Taz says you have to go ahead and you have to bless the bracha of Borei Peragefen and the Koshel Kiddush. Good. Bring it over here also, because when it says over here Kishmamsik L'Havdil, Ein Tzarich Levarech Borei Peragefen, that's specifically where they did not say Ba'uvin Avdil. The Taz will agree with this. But the Taz is telling you, but when they did say Ba'uvin Avdil, we're going to have to go back to the first halach that we learned in Halacha Aleph, where it says, V'im haya yoshev v'shoteh v'chash lo tzarich lafsik. That if a person, and he was sitting and he was drinking, and sunset fell in, he needs to stop. So 1 second. So the halachot of Havdala, and the halachot of Kiddush, meaning the halachot of Mochi Shabbat, and the halachot when Shabbat begins, are identical. Just like over there, I have to stop. And the Taz says, over there you're stopping, that's you have to say another bracha. So it's over here good. I'm also stopping over here, and therefore I have to say another bracha. But when is that? The Taz wants to learn that is specifically when you are in a drinking mode, when you're only drinking, you're not in a bread meal. But the Tosefet Shabbat did say, but if this was a bread meal, and you said the words Ba'uvin Avdil, and now you decided to go ahead and do Havdala, the Taz will agree with the Magen Avraham that in this scenario, you cannot learn out the halachot of Havdala from Kiddush. Why? Because once sun sets, and even when the 3 stars come out, you're not obligated to stop. since I'm not obligated to stop, it's not comparable to the halachot of Kiddush. Because of that, I'm obligated to stop. That's what requires me to say nu bracha. Over here, I'm not obligated to stop, so therefore, I'm not going to say nu bracha. So therefore, according to the Taz, and the Magen Avraham, he holds like the Magen Avraham in this case, if a person's in a bread meal, and they say ba'uvin Havdil, we're going to tell you on the kosher Havdala, you don't have to say the bracha. So this was literally in a nutshell the whole review. Now we're going to jump in straight into Siv Katan Tet in the Mishnah Berurah. He says, "Kishimafsik Havdil." Right, again, let's make this clear, Abotai. Whenever you learn steps, there has to be stepping stones where you're able to climb on top of one and another. Let's do this outside one more time. We said in the Shulchan Aruch, in Halacha Gimel, that when a person interrupts for Havdalah, and remember, we don't know what you're interrupting for, and that's what we want to see right now. When a person interrupts to do Havdalah, he doesn't have to say another bracha of Borei Peri Gefen and the kosher Havdalah. Step number one, we know for sure we're not dealing over here with the case where he said ba'uvin Havdil. That's for sure. Because if they did say ba'uvin Havdil, we know what the machlokit already is. Comes the Mishnah Berurah now and he says like this: Kishimafsik Havdil, when you interrupt to do Havdalah where you didn't say the words ba'uvin Havdil, I know, and what does that mean? And so when are we going to tell you don't have to say the bracha of Borei Peri Gefen and the kosher Havdalah? When are we going to tell you that? I know, and that is, afilu even imaya kavua, if you establish yourself mitchila from the onset lishtiya levad, for drinking alone. The michuyav lavsik, because over there, once it's sunset, you are obligated to stop. Even in such a scenario, if all you were doing, you were drinking, even though you're not allowed to drink after sunset, you were not allowed to drink after when the stars came out, nevertheless you were drinking, and now you decide to go ahead and do Havdalah, comes the Mishnah Berurah and he tells you, afilu hachi, even so in such a case, en tzarich levarech ata borei peri gefen. You don't need to bless now the blessing of borei peri gefen. Why? Sheniftar bebirkat borei peri gefen sheberech al shtiya harishona. Because you already blessed the blessing of borei peri gefen, which you're going to exempt on the kosher Havdalah with the blessing that you blessed on the original cup of wine that you were drinking. Ve'en tzarich lomar, and it's needless to say, im ka'eb be'emtza achilato. It's needless to say that if you are in the middle of your eating, she'en tzarich min adin lafsik, where over there halachically you don't have to stop, like we saw in Halacha Aleph. Ve'rotzeh ata lahavdil, and now he wants to go ahead and he wants to do Havdalah. Al hayayin, on the wine, she'en tzarich levarech ala borei peri gefen. You don't have to bless on it right now, borei peri gefen. Im kvar berech borei peri gefen al hayayin shebetoch hasuda. If you already blessed borei peri gefen on the wine which was during the meal, or shelufnei hasuda, or even before the meal. V'chein, and so too, im mavdil al hasheicher. And so too, if a person wants to go ahead and do now, he doesn't have wine, so he wants, the next best thing is alcoholic beverage, so he wants to go ahead and he wants to do Havdalah on the beer. V'chein, im mavdil al hasheicher. If he wants to go ahead and he wants to do Havdalah on beer, betoch hasuda, in the middle of his meal, ein tzarich levarech shahakol. You don't need to bless shahakol on the kos shel Havdalah, but this kos shel Havdalah is actually beer. I feel him lo berech kalal shahakol mitchila, even if you didn't say shahakol at all from the beginning. Why? Shebirkat hamoti poteret ota, because the bracha of hamoti lech min haaretz exempts the beer that you're going to go ahead and do the Havdalah on. It exempts it. So one more time. V'chein, and so too, im Havdil ala shecher, so too, if a person goes ahead and he does Havdalah on shecher, on beer, betoch hasuda, in the middle of his meal, he stops the meal, and now he wants to go ahead and he wants to do Havdalah on it. Ein tzarich levarech shakol. You don't have to say shakol on the beer. I feel him lo berech klal shakol mitchila. Even if you didn't bless shakol from the onset, shebirkat hamoti poteret ota, because the blessing of hamoti is going to exempt the beer. So it comes out what you're going to end up doing on Havdalah. You're going to say kos rishon l'tzion hinei nav l'Yerushalayim, kos shvot esav Hashem amna ikra ana, write the whole thing, ana Hashem aslichana, and so on and so forth, haslichenu. But when you get to the kos shel Havdala, which right now by you is really beer, you don't say shakol. You go straight for the Bisamim, and then the Borim Ha'esh, and then you say Baruch Ata Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam HaMavdil Bein Kosh V'Chol, etc., and so on and so forth. So we see over here, Rabotai, is something very fascinating. You have to understand how the Biur Halacha clarified everything for us. So it comes out like this. Step number one, let's do the review, because the next piece is ready. V'yesh Omrim Shetzarich. There are those that say, even in such a case, where you're going ahead and you're interrupting a meal, doesn't matter if you're in a bread meal or in a drinking meal alone, meaning you're only drinking alone without being in a bread meal, we're going to tell you have to go back and bless. We'll see that B'ezrat Hashem in the following class where it says V'yesh Omrim Shetzarich. But I don't want to get into that now. Let's go over this one more time. We said in Halacha Gimel that when a person interrupts for Havdala, and we're speaking about, you never use the words Ba'uv and Avdil. Since you never use the words Ba'uv and Avdil, it doesn't matter what you're doing now. That means, if I'm only having a drink after sunset, where I am obligated to stop, and now the 3 stars came out, meaning Shabbat is already out, and now I decide to do Havdalah. Do I say the bracha Borei Peri Gefen on the kos shel Havdalah? Absolutely not. Even though I was obligated to stop, I was not allowed to drink. Still, you don't have to say another bracha. Remember, Rabotai, once the sun set, that does not cut me off. It doesn't separate me from my drink. If I would have said the words Ba'uv and Avdil, that would have been a problem. Continues the Mishnah Berurah. What happens if you were inside a bread meal? In such a case, even in such a case, how much more so in such a case, where you don't have to stop, and now you decide because you wanted to use your phone, or somebody called you and Shabbat came out already, whatever it was, and you decided to do Havdalah, beautiful, go ahead and do Havdalah. But don't say the bracha Borei Peri Gefen on the kos shel Havdalah. Why? Because the blessing that you blessed, the wine blessing that you blessed, either during the meal or either even before the meal, will cover it for the kos shel Havdalah. But then we saw a third point that the Mishnah Berurah brought down. What happens if you want to go ahead and do Havdalah on Sheikhar, where you just went ahead and you washed? You didn't drink tea before the bread washing. You first said Hamot Yilach Min Haaretz, and now you're drinking because Hamot covers all types of drinks except Borei Peri Gefen, because Borei Peri Gefen has its own bracha. It has its own status. So it comes out of here. If Hamot covers this, so therefore when I do want to go ahead and I want to make Havdalah again in the middle of my meal, for whatever reason I have to use the phone or something like that, go ahead, you're allowed to do it on beer since you don't have any wine. Go ahead, do it on beer. Do I say Shahakol Niyeh B'Dvara? You don't say Shahakol Niyeh B'Dvara. Why don't I say it? Even though I never said Shahakol previously to this bracha. Very simple, because Hamot Yilach Min Haaretz, because remember, you're still in the middle of your meal, in the third meal. So the bracha of Hamot Yilach Min Haaretz is going to exempt the bracha for the beer. Rabotai, we're going to conclude over here, and B'ezrat Hashem B'Leneder will start in the following class.